Governor Brian Kemp stepped off the stage a little over an hour ago, but throughout the evening you could still feel that energy and excitement. A crowd chanting 4 more years as Governor Brian Kemp celebrated a victory, a landslide win, making him the Republican nominee for governor. A win that was expected going into tonight as he was leading all of the major polls. A courtroom in absolute shock. Count by count, you could hear gasp as Ryan Duke was found not guilty on all charges except concealing the death of Tara Grinstead. Meanwhile, Ryan Duke gave a sigh of relief as he hugged his defense attorneys. This road right here completely blocked. You can see some power lines down. I'm having to be extra careful as I'm backing up here just to make sure I'm not stepping on any of the lines. Somebody from Georgia Power was just out here and said this line is still hot. This is what's left behind from last night. You can see where folks were doing burnouts here before law enforcement moved in at around 8 and ended the street racing event that many know as Sunday Fun Day. Good evening, Frank. Shortly after that February 25th press conference, we filed an open records request on the DA's files on those cases. Under state law, the public has the right to know the outcome of these criminal cases. And over a month later, the district attorney's office still has not provided us those records. After weeks of back and forth, and only after our station lawyers had to get involved, the DA's office said they would get us those records. But because they didn't keep a list of those 63 inmates, it would cost us $2,922. Because we believe the public has the right to know how the DA's office is handling criminal justice in Bibb County, we paid $1,500 to get the work started. Well, we got back 8 of the 63 files, only 28 pages. All were petitions to revoke probation, all for felony charges. But none of those records explained why the DA's office chose these specific cases for disposition. So we asked the DA's office on camera. This is the only piece of paper that you guys ever dealt with in this whole inmate's case file?
Not their original case, obviously, but in their probation revocation, it may have been the only piece of paper.
This was a really huge loss for Stacey Abrams. She trails Governor Brian Kemp by nearly 300,000 votes. That's 6 times her losing margin in 2018. We're going to look over now to Hancock County. She had 68% last night, but compare that to 2018, 75%. Those percentage points, those votes add up, and you can see that trend across the state, even in the metro Atlanta area. Abrams lost ground last night, even in areas that she won, and an example of that is in Baldwin County. You can see the county flipped. Back in 2018, Abrams won it with 50%. But last night, 53.3% of the vote went to Brian Kemp. This really shows that blue sweep we saw in 2020 wasn't in the state this year. And Kemp's record, his status as an incumbent, the political climate, and the economy all seemed to give him an advantage last night.
Welcome back. When you get in a car wreck, you expect first responders to be able to come to your rescue quickly. But what if they can't get to you? To give you life-saving medical attention without a 30-minute detour. Well, that's what happened in July of 2021 in Juliet because a railroad crossing was blocked by a stopped train.
Now, it's the same crossing that caught the eye of Senator Jon Ossoff in an inquiry to the Federal Railroad Administration. Ashlyn Webb takes a closer look at the trek that's gone from a headache to a public safety problem for folks in Juliet. And tonight's 13 investigates.
286 Montana.
10:30 on the morning of July 30th, 2021. Monroe County deputies respond to an accident on Juliet Road. According to dispatch records, a 73-year-old woman was unconscious after another driver who was under the influence of meth hit her car near the railroad tracks.
So she went moving at the time.
But first responders couldn't get to the scene. A Norfolk Southern train blocked the crossing.
We couldn't get over there. We constantly called Norfolk Southern, asked them to move the train. They gave excuses why they couldn't move the train.
Sheriff Brad Freeman says deputies would have to take a 35-minute detour.
Well, that's a long time. Evidence can be destroyed. Suspects can disappear. And as far on the EMS side, you're looking at, they call it the golden hour, I believe, when you can possibly get a trauma patient to the hospital and possibly save their life. Well, it's taking you 35 minutes. To get to the scene, it can be bad.
While deputies tried to cross the tracks, their office asked neighboring Jones County to respond. But it would take them 30 minutes to get there too. So first responders slid the 73-year-old woman under a train car on a gurney so she could get medical help.
It's scary and disturbing.
Freeman says more life-threatening emergencies like this could happen again. Some Joliet residents, like Andrea Goolsby, say that's their biggest fear.
The fact that I have a child He and myself both spend so much time on the river. If something were to happen across those tracks, who's going to get to us to help us? It's a safety issue. There are people that live on the other side of the tracks that are medically fragile, some terminally ill, and having to go 20 miles out of their way could be life or death.
The Federal Railroad Administration says since June 2020, they've received at least 92 reports of the Juliet Road being blocked. But people in Juliet say they don't report most of those cases to the feds. They say the crossing gets blocked weekly, sometimes daily, for up to 6 hours. Our crew was there when it was blocked on Labor Day.
Move the train!
Just fix it.
But it's not illegal for a train to block a crossing, even for hours. The Federal Railroad Administration says there's no federal laws against it, and there's no Georgia law. States like Illinois, Iowa, and Washington State all have laws banning trains from blocking crossings for more than 10 minutes. And other states like Alabama are considering legislation. Freeman says with safety concerns mounting, they've reached out to Norfolk Southern asking them to fix the problem.
Basically, they were less than polite, basically informed me that there was nothing I could do and basically nothing they would do about it.
Do you feel like you're being railroaded? Do you feel like the city of Juliet is being railroaded in this?
I feel like that the railroad just has an I don't care attitude. It's like, obviously the railroad is a corporation. You can't vote for them. You can't boot them out of office, and they're going to do what they want to do and basically dare you to do anything to them.
Norfolk Southern responded and said they could not move the train on July 30th, 2021 because a train broke down and had to be repaired. But that's not always the case when this crossing is blocked. The railroad says that a train has to stop at a siding here when crews have to take mandated rest times. But they say they're stopping even more nowadays due to staffing problems within the last year. They say they're working to hire more. For 13 Investigates, I'm Ashlyn Webb.
She was just 1% Brianna. She just was a smart, loving, caring human being.
2012, Brianna Greer graduated from Hancock Central High School and went on to Fort Valley State University studying to be a veterinarian.
Smart as a whip. Smart as a whip.
But at school, her parents say she started showing signs of schizophrenia.
With a condition like that, you don't know which way they're gonna go, who or what telling them what to do or how to do. You don't know if they're gonna hurt themselves or hurt you.
Marvin and Mary Greer say their daughter moved back home to Hancock County. But from there, the closest place to get care for schizophrenia was a 40-minute drive in Milledgeville.
That's too long a distance.
Especially after she had several mental health episodes, her parents say.
That's why we always call 911. That was our only resources here, 911.
The Greers say EMTs usually came to their home along with deputies. But on July 15th, when they called 911 because Brianna was screaming outside their house, only 2 Hancock deputies responded. They arrested her for public drunkenness. Deputies' body camera video shows Brianna as they carry her to the cruiser, her yelling, "Bring out your breathalyzer," and "I ain't broke no law." The Greers say their daughter was not treated like she was having a schizophrenic episode, but rather
like a criminal.
This time, the Greers called for help and did differently.
Sit up, Brianna. You all right? How did she jump at the car? Don't supposed to be unlocked from the back.
Do you think that the outcome on July 15th would have been different if a mental health provider was there along with police?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
We need training for the police officer. We need someone to assist them if they don't get the training in it. They need somebody to assist them that can deal with people that have mental challenge.
A law that took effect just 2 weeks earlier aims to do just that. Get counselors on the ground with law enforcement responding to mental health calls. Savannah State Senator Ben Watson was the primary sponsor.
Was to require the framework to allow this to happen, to encourage this to happen.
A law with no mandate. It's up to counties to choose whether to implement and to find the money.
I think it's something that is going to be a great return on investment when it comes to saving the county's money. It's going to be doing the right thing. It's going to be doing getting patients out of emergency rooms and out of jails and into places where they should be.
And even if a county creates a co-responder team, they have to find mental health counselors who can respond. The General Assembly tried to help this year by offering tax credits and incentives in a separate bill. The Greers say that doesn't give immediate help to families like theirs trying to get their loved ones' care closer to home.
Transportation is tough, and living in poverty is tough. There's no doubt about that. This is offering a framework to allow that. This is not the panacea by any means. It's not going to cure mental health by any means.
Watson says it's not up to the state to provide mental health resources. It's just there as a safety net.
The question is why are they there? Could this have been addressed ahead of time? Certainly it should have been. So I would say it's really more of the family's responsibility to help that person get help.
But the Greers say they did all they could.
Everything that we could handle and do it all over again if we had to.
And the state needs to step up to bridge the gap in access.
We need some resources.
For 13 Investigates, I'm Ashlyn Webb.
A Macon chiropractor faces a charge of sexual battery again. This time, Dr. Bailey Phillips is accused of touching a patient. They say he had made advances at her, looked down her sweatpants, and touched her tailbone.
According to the Bibb County Sheriff's Office, Bailey Phillips was arrested for felony sexual battery on May 11th. He was released the same day on a $10,000 bond. But as Ashlyn Webb reports, 15 years ago, 3 of his own employees came forward saying they were being sexually harassed and assaulted.
This is just the case file from 2007. In this file, 3 women who were all employed by Dr. Phillips at the time tell Macon police what they say happened. They describe a work environment where they were repeatedly sexually harassed and preyed on. Tonight, we tell their stories. The women say the harassment began in February 2007. Dr. Bailey Phillips was their boss. They all worked at Phillips' Vineville Avenue practice. The first woman says Phillips grinded against her pants. She says he later exposed himself while she and a patient were in his office in September. Then another woman said he exposed himself to her in the office the same month. And a third woman told police he grabbed her breast in October 2007. They told police they were scared to come forward because they feared losing their jobs, and Phillips told each not to tell anyone. One woman told an investigator, "I feel powerless, afraid, untrusting, and insecure. I'm embarrassed and I'm hurt. I don't want to tell my husband because I'm ashamed of what he would think of me, and I feel nervous around people I don't even know." Another woman saying, "I was a single mom who needed a job. I could not just quit and not have any money. I was afraid." The same woman went on to say he needs to do jail time so that he can't do this to anybody else. His license needs to be gone and he needs mental help. The Bibb County Sheriff's Office tells 13 WMAZ Phillips was arrested in October 2007 for those incidents, resulting in 3 counts of sexual battery and 2 counts of indecent exposure. Records show Phillips went to court in June 2008. A judge dismissed 2 counts of sexual battery and 1 count of indecent exposure. He pleaded no contest to 1 charge of sexual battery and 1 count of indecent exposure. He was also sentenced to 1 12-month period for each of those, meaning 2 years in all. Now the question that still remains, why was Dr. Phillips able to keep his license and keep working as a chiropractor here in Macon? His license was renewed in 2011 by the Georgia Board of Chiropractor Examiners after those first alleged incidents. That board is under the Secretary of State's office. Their website says they protect, promote, and preserve the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Georgia. But we asked Friday morning why Dr. Phillips was still able to hold that license. They told us they wouldn't be able to give us an answer until Tuesday due to the long Memorial Day weekend. Reporting in Macon, Ashlyn Webb, 13 WMAZ News.
Phillips attorney Scott Huggins emailed us this afternoon to say he had no comment, except to say his client is presumed to be not guilty and he's confident a jury will find that.
Who's more accurate at predicting elections? Would you put your money on professional pollsters or online gamblers?
Well, recent studies, including one from the University of North Carolina, found folks making bets tend to be more accurate. And online bettors, they're throwing stacks of money at Georgia's election, particularly on who will win Georgia's Senate seat.
Ashlyn Webb takes a closer look at the growing industry around political betting. She talked to top traders and the folks behind one of the top political betting sites.
Tens of thousands of Americans are putting money where their mouth is, betting thousands on who will win elections.
But I deposit, I think, maybe $5,000. Profits are, I think, somewhere around 450. Okay.
To have that kind of return, I mean, that's insane.
It's the kind of thing where if you're into this stuff and you're willing to follow the news and you have a decent head for numbers, you can get good at it.
Most political bettors do this as a side gig, but for Jason Pipkin, he says he's gambling full-time after leaving his job in neuroscience research. And he says he's making bets in Georgia.
Right now, I'm betting on Herschel Walker, but that's probably going to change. Could change tomorrow, could change later.
He uses one of the most popular sites to trade on here in the U.S., Predictit.org. Ethan Rosen is the site's assistant director.
It's grown enormously in popularity.
Rosen says folks are betting heavily on Georgia's races, like the governor's race, where over 400,000 shares have been traded, with Governor Brian Kemp holding a hefty lead over Democrat Stacey Abrams. And even more are betting it all on Georgia's Senate race, over 1.2 million shares traded on who will win. Democrat incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock or Republican Herschel Walker.
These are two of the more interesting races I've seen, in part because predicted traders think that there's going to be a high amount of ticket splitting, meaning people who vote for both Kemp and Warnock.
But how does it work? Well, here's the deal. Political betting runs on a prediction market. Cost of a single share changes constantly with the market by how folks are betting.
It's a market that takes in people's perceptions of the races and comes out with a price that corresponds to probability.
For example, when Pipkin and I talked, more were betting on Senator Warnock winning, with a single share in his favor costing 64 cents.
That means if you want to bet on him to win, you would pay 64 cents per share. So if you come in with 64 cents, you get one share. If he wins, that share is worth $1. If he loses, it's worth nothing. And in between now and that happening, winning or losing, you can sell that trade for a small profit or a small loss.
But especially in races like this, Pipkin and Rosen say bettors have to play their cards right by doing the research and reacting quickly to headlines. For instance, the market for Georgia's Senate race changed within hours after the report that Herschel Walker allegedly paid for his then-girlfriend's abortion.
Predicted moved 10 cents that night.
And then when his son Christian started tweeting about it, it really moved. So it went all the way to 65, 35.
Because as the information was coming in, people were making predictions on how it would impact the race in the future.
That's in part why several studies, including from the University of Iowa and University of North Carolina, have concluded that prediction markets for elections are often more accurate than polling.
So when people have skin in the game, they tend to do more research and to make more reasoned opinions.
When you have money on the line, it really sobers you up and forces you to assess the situation as rationally and as clearly as you can.
So what do you think now? Will you bet on the ballot this November? For 13 WMAZ, I'm Ashlyn Webb.
Political betting has been outlawed in the U.S. However, it's not illegal for folks to use Predictit.org.
The site secured a no-action letter from the Division of Market Oversight of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission back in 2014. However, that agency revoked the letter in August of this year, meaning Predictit could be forced to shut down by February of 2023.